The movie begins with the bodyguards of a drug mafia brutally beating innocent people, establishing the mafia boss as a ruthless criminal involved in smuggling drugs and weapons, and even murder. In the next scene, the smuggler arrives at his lavish home with heavy security and heads to his private pool for a swim. As he enters the water, he notices a mysterious man already waiting for him. Suddenly, the man attacks and begins choking him underwater. The smuggler struggles to survive, but fails. The killer, clever and calculated, positions the lifeless body in a way that makes it look like the smuggler is just floating calmly, fooling the bodyguards and buying himself time to escape unnoticed. The killer was Arthur, who is a contract killer, and he escaped from the smuggler's house by jumping from the bridge to reach his boat as planned. In the next scene, we see that Arthur is at his house, playing music and looking at the photos of people he has killed, then burning the photos. The next day, Arthur went to see his old friend named Harry in a restaurant. They talk about work and assignments that Arthur completed in the past. Harry praised Arthur for his work by calling him a machine. At night, Arthur went to a bar for a drink and a good time, where he met Sarah, who invited him to dance. After they danced, they went to Sarah's house and spent the night together. The next morning, Arthur left Sarah's house, leaving her money for the night before. In the next scene, we see that Arthur's boss gave him an assignment to kill Harry, the old friend we saw him meet in the previous scene. To confirm that the assignment was actually given by his boss, Arthur went to meet him in person, where he came face to face with his boss, named Dean. Dean told Arthur that Harry is the next target, and he must kill him to complete the job. He also showed Arthur records of his past kills and praised his work. Dean explained that Harry is making suspicious transactions, has gotten old, and is now a threat, so he has to be eliminated. In the next scene, we see Arthur making a phone call to Harry, warning him to leave his house because someone is coming to kill him. Arthur instructs him to cut the power and turn off the cameras, then leave the building using the stairs and head to the parking lot. Somehow, Harry manages to reach the parking lot, only to find his car damaged and Arthur already there waiting for him. Arthur played it smart, tricking Harry into bypassing his own security and coming to the parking lot without anyone noticing. There, they shared a few good memories, and eventually Arthur killed Harry, taking his expensive gun as a keepsake. The murder was carefully staged to look like a car hijacking, just as Arthur had planned. In the next scene, we see that Harry has a son named Steve, who is standing at his father's grave. Arthur meets Steve there, and they introduce themselves. Later, they go to Harry's house and talk for a while. Steve says he's planning to go after every car hijacker in the city, believing one of them killed his father. Arthur tries to stop him, telling him it's pointless and not worth it. In the next scene, we see Steve sitting in his car, waiting for a car hijacker. After some time, a man approaches to steal his car, but Steve beats him badly. Just then, Arthur shows up and punches Steve to stop him from going too far. They both leave the scene together. The next morning, Steve visits Arthur and asks him to train him. He wants to become a killer just like him. Arthur agrees and gives him a task: to kill a tall man who visits a coffee shop every day. The plan was to fool the target, as the tall man had a weakness for dogs and young boys. They both agreed on the approach, and Arthur began training Steve in shooting, hand-to-hand combat, and other skills. The plan was for Steve to lure the tall man using a dog and then poison him at the right moment. The next day, they were sitting in the coffee shop when the tall guy came and sat with Steve, starting a conversation. He was clearly attracted to Steve and the small dog. They agreed to meet later that night at a bar, where they ended up drinking a lot of alcohol. However, Steve made a mistake. He didn't want to use poison like Arthur planned. Instead, he wanted to kill the target in a brave, face-to-face way, just like Arthur does. Steve and the tall guy went to his house. Things got physical, and then Steve suddenly attacked. But Steve wasn't strong enough. He struggled a lot trying to kill the tall man. A brutal fight broke out with both of them getting hurt. Eventually, Steve managed to kill the tall guy, but he was badly injured in the process. In the next scene, Arthur makes a phone call to Dean and talks about Harry. Dean tells him he earned a lot of money by completing that job. Now, Arthur receives another assignment: to kill a fat man who is very rich, runs several churches, and seems to be a corrupt and dangerous figure. Steve and Arthur planned to kill the fat man and went to his residence, where they observed him closely through the many security cameras around the property. In the next scene, they both entered the building through the ventilation system to reach the fat man's room. There, they saw him taking drugs, which meant the poison Arthur had prepared wouldn't work because of the drug's effects. So they had to find another way to kill him. When the fat man was unconscious and alone in the room, they entered and silently killed him by forcing a camera into his mouth to choke him. After the kill, they tried to return through the ventilation system, but the fat man's guards discovered them and started shooting. Arthur and Steve managed to reach the rooftop and escaped by climbing down and entering a room in the building. Arthur then went to his friend's yard, only to find his friend was missing. At the same time, a car arrived with 4 men holding guns, ready to kill him. Arthur hid in the water and suddenly emerged, killing all 4 men one by one. He discovered that these men were sent by Dean, and now Arthur had to kill Dean. Meanwhile, when Arthur called Steve, he warned him that Dean's men might be coming after him too. Steve, prepared for the threat, retrieved a gun from his sofa and killed Dean's people in a professional manner. We saw Steve becoming highly skilled at taking down targets. In the next scene, Steve found Harry's gun in Arthur's garage and was saddened by it. Both of them were getting ready to kill Dean, and Steve, emotionally overwhelmed, asked Arthur some personal questions while crying. They went to one of Dean's employees to get information about Dean's location. The employee initially refused to tell them, but when Arthur threatened to kill his daughter, the man finally gave up the information. They loaded their guns, got ready, and set out to find Dean. By the time they arrived at Dean's location, Dean had already fled, fearing Arthur's wrath. Steve took a bus, while Arthur drove a car to pursue him. Arthur rammed his car into Dean's, and the action began. Arthur fired, killing several of Dean's men. Eventually, Arthur attacked Dean's car with a truck. Dean, severely injured, died from the assault. In the final scene of the movie, we see Steve stealing Arthur's car and preparing to leave. However, he suddenly notices a letter in the car. It read, "If you're reading this, you're dead." Then, the car Steve was in exploded, along with Arthur's house, and Steve was killed by Arthur, who had set the trap.